Here we
There
go.
it is.
Yes,
Continue,
sir.
and there we go. So we're
Suicide
recording now.
logs.
Yep.
Episode. Shoot, this is how unorganized I am. I don't even know what episode I am. I think this is episode 157. I'm with Mr. George Soros. Soros. It's Greek. Um, might have been messed up on the accent there. He is a philosopher, right? Or you got a do you have like a degree in philosophy or something like
Yep.
that?
Yep. I have a degree in philosophy. I teach philosophy. I think about other things like that sometimes, among other things. So yeah, yeah.
Nice, nice. Is that like your full-time job, philosophy
Yeah,
teacher?
yeah. That's what
Interesting.
pays the bills, as it were.
Interesting. At
Um,
a college or high
yep.
school or
In the city university with the City University of New York.
nice.
I've taught at several different campuses around City University of New York, and yeah, like I said, teaching pays the bills and keeps my mind and the wheels turning, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
How many years have you been doing this?
Whew. I think I've been teaching at that at the college level since I think 2008 sounds about right, and I've been with CUNY and really narrowed with philosophy and Japanese literature actually too,
Yes.
since about 2012. Since about
Okay.
2012. So, and then
Do you
I've been in other educational positions since 2002, I guess.
wow.
2002.
So
Yeah.
main career from the outside is just a teacher.
Yes. Yes.
Nooks and
Yeah.
crannies of it. That's cool, man. Do you speak fluent Japanese or are you just into like the culture of Japan?
I should don't tell any of my bosses, but I should speak a lot better Japanese than I do. I don't speak Japanese very well, but yeah, I just really get deep into a lot of the English, a lot of the stuff that's translated into English. However, there's so many helpful tools nowadays that are that help translation and things like that. And of course, if I need a little bit of help, I could ask my friends too. So yeah,
But
among other
I'm
things.
sorry. So you teach Japanese culture too? Oh yeah, like you said, don't tell
Japanese
your
culture.
bosses.
Yep.
Okay,
Japanese
okay.
culture, Japanese
That
literature.
nice.
Yeah, I snuck into that in an interesting way. Just yeah, by really being interested in that stuff, and then saying, "Wait a second,
Wow.
I think I could do this," and somebody was and adventurous enough to give me a shot, and I'm grateful for that. And
Nice,
yeah,
man.
it turned out into a little something too. Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited to talk to you, man. I've really been wanting to speak with someone of credentials as you.
Well,
Seriously, man. Like
yeah, we'll
I
see.
mean,
I wonder if it's all that it's that you're thinking about. Maybe it's yeah.
well,
We'll see what happens. We'll
I don't
see.
really, I swear, I'll be completely honest. I didn't even know your name until maybe 30 minutes ago. I just, I
Right, right,
watched
right.
a couple of your videos, but I
Hmm.
was just,
Yeah,
just kind of busy. And so I kind of had it
no,
in the background playing,
yeah,
but reading your biography and everything about you and stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm assuming he's got like a degree or something. And something with my show, I really wanted to maybe philosophy would be a good thing to talk about. I never really, I guess for me, I've always wanted to talk to like a psychologist or something on
right,
my podcast, or maybe maybe even a therapist, excuse me. But
right.
philosophy, I feel like that's something I get into. So correct me if I'm wrong. Would you consider religion as a form of philosophy?
I think this is how I take philosophy. I mean, I feel like if you ask 10 different philosophers, what is philosophy, you'll probably get 20 different answers.
Okay.
And the reason I love philosophy so much is because it's really, at least how I see it, it really is getting deep into the ideas of just about anything. So certainly philosophy of religion. I've taught philosophy of religion. I'm so grateful that you mentioned my videos on YouTube. What are they called? Pondering Philosophy on YouTube. Yeah, my channel is George Tsouris, Tsouris. And one reason I haven't done the philosophy of religion one yet, but I will. I hope to in the future produce a little series on philosophy of religion. But it's asking a lot of the harder questions. I guess some of the foundational questions or some of the questions regarding assumptions that just about anything has, not just religion, of course, religion, but even reality. What is your philosophy of reality? When I really got interested in philosophy, Somebody just asked me this the other day, so it's really funny that you're almost asking me the same question. They asked me, what did you really focus on when you were in school? And I said philosophy of science, actually philosophy of quantum mechanics. And somebody's like, what is that? And it's just like, well, you just question, what does quantum mechanics really mean? What does religion really mean? I mean, that's an oversimplification without question. But yeah, you could ask just about any question about anything. What is the philosophy of, I don't know, engineering, or the philosophy of economics, or the philosophy of video games? I think a lot of people are, especially since I've gotten into video games a little bit, making video games actually. I've really tried to get into how some philosophers are thinking about video games, and looking and asking different questions about how video games work. How does it work on our minds? How does it make us consider reality? How does it affect our experience? How might a video game be especially suited to ask different questions than a movie might not be able to ask, or a piece of music might not be able to ask? So
you're also a music composer, right?
Yeah, exactly. See, so I like, and that's what I really like about philosophy, is that it gives me a good excuse. Again, please don't tell my bosses about any of this, but it gives me a really good excuse to just explore all these different things that I'm really interested in, especially music. I like music a lot. Like you just said, I compose music. I work in music. Also filmmaking, animation, and from a philosophical perspective, we could really, I could really look at all these different things with a very curious eye, I guess you could say. I think my bosses, one thing that will probably make them happy, that I'm going to say, is every now and again, we have to tell people, hey, major in philosophy, don't you want to switch to a philosophy major? And everybody frequently says things like, what am I supposed to do with a philosophy major? And my answer is, anything you want, man.
Right.
It's just a way of thinking. Philosophy, and how I teach philosophy at least, is just about thinking about things. How do we think about, well, you said religion, or psychiatry even, or psychology? There's certainly a lot of people who study and get into the philosophy of psychology, like you said. A big thing that I'm not quite as interested in philosophy of psychology, but I'm a little bit more interested in the philosophy of neuroscience, which is, all having to do with the mind and things like that too. So it's, philosophy is I feel like it's just a bucket kind of term that really covers so many wide things.
Very broad.
Exactly. It's broad. Whatever you want to do philosophy of, you can. That's my point, right? So yeah, you say philosophy of religion. Certainly, a lot of people doing that.
I feel like I'm getting like a discounted lesson at New York University, because all I'm thinking about is just people pay money to talk to you, and I'm trying to put myself in a position if I were a college student and I had your class.
It's so funny though too. At the same time, again, please don't tell my bosses this, but I'm not sure. I think I don't know if I should be saying this in a proper in front of my bosses, but it's ridiculous that I get paid for this, because I feel like just like you said, everybody's philosophical, right? Everybody's already philosophical. You don't need me to help you think philosophically. Well, maybe.
Some people.
So I've been wrestling with that question myself. Like, and my students say, "Oh yeah, this class is great," blah blah blah, and I'm like, "Why? What am I doing here? I just ask you all to read, and then I merely ask the questions. Very rarely do I give answers, right? It's just, hey, these are the questions that we're asking. And so maybe that is what I'm paid to do, is get people to think about questions that they might not have otherwise considered, right? And even maybe guide them towards, there's libraries where that are filled with philosophy, but you can go to your public library and get all the books that I assign, probably for free. Right?
You can probably Google everything you're talking about right now.
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm like, what am I paid for? I don't understand what I'm paid for. And I think the only thing might be that I'm paid for is that I ask questions or guide certain things that other people might not have initially thought about. But even then, I don't even agree with that, because listen, I remember when I was younger, I remember my friends, not me, never me, but my friends would be sitting around the basement, playing video games, smoking some of the funny grass. And, we're always thinking these hard questions. Wait, man, could you imagine if,
Yeah.
what if this isn't reality right now, man? Have you ever considered that question? And I mean, that's what I get paid to do is really seriously wrestle with that question.
You're trying to say that you're in a way like everybody else, like you think just like everybody else. But look, I mean, you have valid points. I see what you're saying, but also you might be cutting yourself a little short here. They're like I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a student.
Right.
Some of my favorite classes that I've taken in college, um, it's crazy how much though, not even college, high school, regular math and English teachers play a big influence in somebody's life. And sometimes I think about it, the teachers that spoke to me when I was a teenager, early 20s, maybe even not even double digits yet. There's been times in my life where a teacher has said something, regardless of what it was, and it stuck with me, and it might have changed the course of my life. And with a teacher of your caliber too, teaching at a university, people are at kind of like the final stages of schooling, and really I don't know, they're at that high level. Not everybody, I'm assuming most of the people that are in your class want to be in your class. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
I mean, unless it's a requirement, maybe you have to take
Exactly.
a philosophy
Yeah,
class.
yeah. I think that I'm fortunate, not just me, but I think the students are fortunate too, that they are forced to take, for better or for worse, they are kind of forced to take these requirements, and they go, oh man, what is philosophy? What am I wasting my time with philosophy? So I was joking a little bit earlier about, yeah, being in the basement, playing video games, and doing some of that funny grass, and thinking about these questions. And they might not have thought that, yeah, to your point about how somebody might inspire, how I might inspire. And by the way, I do take that as a very important part of my job, is to motivate students to really see the value of these questions. Is that, yeah, when you're in the basement playing video games or staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., thinking about these questions, you might discount your own ideas and go, why, I shouldn't be thinking about this, right? Oh, this is stupid. This is just us, a little bit high or intoxicated thinking about this. But then you come to my class where some people are forced to come, and they go, wait, I didn't know we were allowed to think about these questions. I thought this was only for like hanging out. And, when we were a little bit, we took a little bit too much of the funny stuff. And that's when I thought about these questions, but I didn't know I was really allowed to think about these questions too much. And I mean, to your point that, yeah, I think there's the inspiration, because I do really believe that we're all philosophers. However, as we grow up, we stop asking these questions, right? You'll forgive me, but I remember, maybe I'm just an intuitive philosopher, but I remember, and I'm willing you do too, when you were a little kid, you asked your parents questions that they were just like, listen, I don't know. Just shut up with that question. Stop asking that question. And if it wasn't your parents, then it was maybe a teacher or somewhere along the lines. You were talking about philosophy of religion before. And you might say to the priest or the pastor, wait, what does the Holy Trinity mean? What do you mean? 3 persons, 1 God. And then they just don't ask that question. Just believe, will you? And, in philosophy class, we kind of, I at least give the permission to ask anything. Ask anything, and we are allowed to ask anything and to take it. And sometimes that means even say anything, which people have been discouraged to talk about for a long time. And maybe that's the inspiring thing, because my hunch is that somewhere along the education line, you were talking about high school a minute ago. Somewhere in high school, you said you've had that inspirational teacher, but I remember a lot of my high school teachers that were the exact opposite of inspirational, right? That were like, no, just think this way. This is what you have to do. And this is the way you're going to do this in this class and life, right? Whether it's parents, whether it's our pastors, whether it's our teachers, who have confined, I think, a lot of our thinking. And I think that might be the inspiring thing, is that some teacher that you had who was inspiring who inspired you said something like, it's okay to ask that question. You go and do that and keep doing that. And that's all right. And that's why I think I'm lucky to be a philosophy professor, because that's pretty much always my answer is that that's a good question. I'm not sure I have all these answers right now, but let's wrestle with that question right now for a little while. Let's see what it means. Well, I'm not sure about God. Does God really exist? I don't know. Great. This is the class for that. Let's really wrestle with this and see what this kind of thing means. You'll forgive me. I'm getting distracted right now just because it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend yesterday about Santa Claus. And they're like, oh my God, Santa Claus. I can't believe, and he just had his own baby recently. He's like, I can't believe that so many parents around the world, they teach their kids to such lies about Santa Claus. Why would we lie to our child about Santa Claus? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess you don't believe in Santa Claus, do you? And I said, no, you'll forgive me. I don't believe in Santa Claus, but.
Oh no, I got to turn the show off.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. That's one of my hard beliefs. But isn't there something magical that maybe we're not exactly lying to children when we're teaching them that Santa Claus, hey, let's pray for what is it? I guess people don't pray to Santa Claus, but they leave the cookies out for Santa Claus. And people say, oh, you're lying to your children. Well, maybe you're lying, maybe. And I'm not going to dismiss that position. But at the same time, isn't there some other value in believing in Santa Claus?
Right.
Or something like that. And I know that in my Japanese literature classes, I teach a writer named Murakami Haruki, who's very famous in Japan and certainly very famous here. And his writing style always involves this little parts of magic called magic realism. You know, the genre is kind of called magic realism. And I always ask the students, why do you put this in the story we read is called Elephant Vanishes? Why do you put this little magical elephant in the story, except the whole rest of the story is realistic? And I'm wondering about that. And the way I've wondered about it is maybe there is a value in believing in magic. Now, I'm not saying believing in every silly thing that comes along. I certainly don't believe in everything. And I do say, I don't believe in this. I do believe in that, right? But isn't there some kind of value in believing in magic? Some kind of magic. Because, you know, I certainly went through this phase of my life where everything was just cold, hard facts. And if it wasn't cold, hard facts, I didn't believe in it. And I kind of still stick with that. That does stay with me. But now that I'm a little bit older and I look around and I get misty-eyed when I see the Christmas trees decorated in the neighborhood. And I'm like, wow, there really is something there that's missing. Isn't there more to life than just the cold, hard facts? Now, I'm not sure that there's a jolly old fat man that comes down my chimney. By the way, I live in New York City. I live in a New York City apartment. I have no chimney, right? So how does any of that make sense? But there might be value in the nostalgia, perhaps.
Right.
And isn't there some value in thinking like a child, by the way? And I know for a large portion of my life, I didn't think like a child. And now I'm like, wow, I wish I could believe in that magical stuff. And
there is something magical about feeling young. Like just because I'm about 27 right now. So I'm kind of, you know, I like to have this joke where I say I'm level 2 adult. You know, I've been an adult, but maybe not that long enough, but long enough to consider it a big part of my life, I guess. And I still long for that feeling of like, I can never go back unless I get, you know, handicapped or something happens to me and I have an accident and I need to be taken care of for the rest of my life. But besides that, if everything goes as smooth as possible, there's like no way that I'm going to go back to not being able to drive, not knowing how to drive, just like simple adult things, paying bills and things like that. And when you take so many adult things away from someone, what are you necessarily? You're just like a grown child. And sometimes I really do try to make time for my life, just like a day where how do I say it? I don't really have a name for it or anything, but I always try to make time at least once a month or something where I have nothing scheduled and all I do is just be a 15-year-old. You know, I'll eat junk food and not try not to feel. And as I get older, I start paying for it a little bit more. The other
Yeah,
day,
tell me
dude,
about it.
the other day I ate marshmallows because when I remember when I was young, I would just eat bags of marshmallows like it was candy or something. And I had 3 marshmallows and I just had this disgusting like guilt of what the fuck am I doing? This is not good for me.
Yeah, yeah.
But
For me, it's chocolate. For me, my marshmallows are chocolate, and always around December, I just gorge myself on M&Ms and Hershey Kisses and all kinds of chocolate from all over the place. And then
you probably
exactly like
feel
you
it in the
said,
morning.
I regret it. Yeah, I regret it, but there is something childish though.
I want to back up a little bit though, because you told me about the invisible elephant. Is that what it was? Or the disappearing elephant? Vanishing
Yeah,
elephant. So that's like
yeah,
a Japanese story or something.
yeah, yeah. It's a Japanese story by a famous Japanese writer named Murakami Haruki. It was
Right,
written
right.
in 1985. And he's very famous in America, even for those people who read. I forget what his. I used to follow him a lot more. I was, I had a big project on him earlier in my life, but I've passed that project by. Some of his bigger novels are Norwegian Wood, which was turned into a movie. It's a copy. It steals the title of a Beatles song, right?
Mhm.
Another big novel of his was The Wind Up Bird Chronicle. Kafka on the Shore is another one. Recently, he's made Colorless Tsukuru and The Adventures of Colorless Tsukuru or something like this. I haven't read that one because, yeah, my Murakami
Does
days
he
are a
make
little bit
so
behind me.
he makes stories for children?
No, they're
Oh,
adults,
okay.
and,
Because when you
and
said
not
the
only are
con
they
uh,
not only are they for adults, but they're some people say that they're hard to understand
uh,
because there's this weird magic. It's like what happened to this elephant? The
uh,
story makes sense.
I'm gonna look into it. Do
Yeah,
Jap
no,
do
I encourage
Japanese
you.
do
Yeah,
Japanese people believe in Santa Claus? Like, is
yeah.
that a thing?
That's an interesting question because certainly Christmas is a lot more celebrated in Japan today than it was, let's say, 100 years ago. But yeah, what do they believe in? What don't they believe in? There's an old saying that I'm stealing, and of course it's a overgeneralization, but it's these overgeneralizations are there for a reason. There's something that says, God, how does it go? It says when you're born in Japan, you're born Shinto in the Shinto religion, you
Okay.
marry Christian, and then when you die, you become Buddhist, or in elderly life, you become
Huh.
Buddhist. And yeah, I might have mixed up that phraseology, but the meaning for me is that Japan just has a tremendous history. I mean, this goes back to ancient times, even of bringing in so many different cultures and so many different religious beliefs and combining them uh, in a coherent way. Or maybe it's not coherent. And so what if it's not coherent, right? But they're able to live with so many different traditions and say, yeah, and make it theirs. Whereas here in America, to say I'm a Christian Jew or a Christian Muslim just is like, no, you have to pick one.
You gotta pick
You have
one.
to
Yeah,
pick one.
right.
Where in Japan, there's just like, yeah, I'm Buddhist and Shinto and Christian and this and so many things. Now, not everybody follows along that path,
Like the
right?
mixed martial arts of religion.
Exactly.
But it's
There you are. Right. Exactly. Right. And so it's an like I said, an old stereotype about Japanese culture, especially in the 20th century, that they just take the best of all these different worlds and make it their own stuff,
yeah.
And yeah, I think one way that it really manifests is in technology, of course, right? Sony is a big company. Sony, I don't think invented anything, but they made everything better, right? All these American inventions, they just made better. Or the automobiles, Japanese cars,
Undefeated.
the most reliable cars in the world, right?
Yeah.
They didn't invent the car, but
There's
they
some kind
took
of
it.
magic there. I don't know.
Exactly. So there is that kind of thing. So you asked, oh well, do the Japanese believe in Santa Claus?
Yeah,
There
I was
are
wondering if it's like the same. Like, do they are the children in Japan waiting by their chimney like the same story, or is it maybe twisted a little? Because I think in Russia they don't celebrate Christmas as the same way we do, or something. I don't
right.
know.
I mean, all over the world, it's a little bit wild, right? Because yeah, Christmas is different, so many different places, and what role does Santa Claus play everywhere? And in other places, it's more about baby Jesus, which
Mhm.
actually makes sense when you think about it. It's called Christmas. It's supposed to be celebrating Jesus's birth. But yeah, in Japan, I'm not so sure. I can't be certain about these things. But my hunch is that yeah, Santa Claus doesn't play the serious role that the same role that we get in American commercialized,
Yeah.
society. But there is nonetheless a very strong spiritual slash religious mindset. I'll give you one quick anecdote, or I can't be quick because I talk too much. You'll forgive me. So I'll give you a long-winded anecdote.
You're good. You're good.
When I lived in Japan, I wasn't robbed, but somebody was like, would you call it stalking or snooping or like looking through my window? What do you call it? Voyeur, like a
Yeah.
voyeur or something like that.
Peeping
And I was
Tom.
freaked. Yeah, peeping Tom. There you go, peeping Tom. And it freaked me out. It really freaked me out, and I scared the person away. Blah blah blah. And then I went to the police, and I said, "Hey, you know what? There's these peeping Tom going around town, going around the neighborhood," and they kind of blew me off. And they said, "Well, listen, we haven't heard any stories, so whatever." But I told my other friends, my other Japanese friends, they're in Japan, and without any hesitation, they said, they were like, "Maybe it was a ghost."
Oh shit.
And I was like, huh. And I didn't know if they were serious. You'll forgive me. I don't believe in ghosts that way, right? But they were saying it very seriously, and more than a few friends said this. And I have a hunch that if I told the same story to my friends here in America, that hey, there was a peeping Tom, not one of them would say, hey, maybe it was a ghost.
You know what's crazy, dude? A couple of months ago, I had the exact same story, but the opposite. So I thought I saw a ghost, but I'm like you. I don't really believe in ghosts. So, with that being said, it had to be really, obvious for me to start thinking, okay, this has got to be a ghost. I have a whole episode about it and everything, but I think
Wow.
there's a comedic end to it. Basically, there wasn't a ghost. It was fucking the light from my toothbrush. But I thought, like, I swore I double checked it and everything. There was this blue light, and then I started looking into something called Archangel Miguel or Archangel Michael, all this stuff. And my girl's family is very into that a little bit. So they were kind of like trying to say it is a ghost. Maybe you did see something. People go their whole lives looking for this blue light. And when I told my dad about it, my dad was like, no, you got a peeping Tom. There's somebody putting cameras in your house. You gotta go check this out. But yeah, go ahead. I just
that's exactly my point, right? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I mean, listen, there's other cultures around the world where they believe in elves. Or at least that's what they say. They walk around. I think there's I'm not an expert on Iceland, but I've seen different things and read different things where they said, they literally will set up the houses in the hills, little like gnome houses, and they said, no, these are for the elves.
Oh my God!
Come on, are you
Dude,
shitting me here?
In today's
like, no,
real estate climate, sell that shit.
Yes, seriously, right? These are for the elves. So it really is fascinating to me, just that extra spiritual sort of perspective that isn't necessarily expressed as frequently here, or if it is expressed in America, it's with a very Christian sort of perspective, at least in my experience in America, that it's only these certain Christian experiences that really speak to things like that, whereas all over the world there are these very magic. And are we missing something if we don't believe in magic? Now, I'm with you, man. I think it was a toothbrush. I bet it was a toothbrush.
It was just this long. I thought my life was going to change. I thought I was going to be religious and all of this stuff. And then I saw the light again, like a couple nights later, and I just was relentless. I was like, I am going to find the source of this, because the first time I thought it was a toothbrush, but for some reason my toothbrush just wasn't cooperating and with the light, and I don't know, it was just a weird story. But hey, I got a bunch of questions. So question number one, because I want to know if you've ever thought of this, or if anyone has ever came with you at this question because of what you were saying earlier about, we all get high and have these ideas. And I do that. I have these questions, and one thing that stops me from furthering my thoughts and theories or philosophies is that I always just feel like unqualified to ask these questions or even further indulge. Like I think it was just yesterday I was pondering about something and I just stopped, and I always find comfort in the fact that there are smarter people than me, and I always just kind of think like, I think it was just yesterday I had this thought, like I was just wondering about, I don't know what it was, but I basically concluded with, you just got to be okay knowing that there are people who are smarter than you and dedicate their whole lives to whatever problem I was thinking about at that moment. And my ideas and stuff has probably already been recycled or been thought through. But here's one of the thoughts that I wanted to share with someone of your
Yeah.
your knowledge. So do you think, like, okay, I just have this idea. I don't know if you think of it as a philosophy or a theory, but I feel like Christmas and the idea of Santa Claus and stuff like that is almost like the training wheels of religion. You show it to your children and it's like, behave, follow the rules, and you'll be rewarded at the end. And sometimes I feel like Christmas was just created by the government to keep people in line, because it's like, okay, eventually in life, at a certain age, you're going to stop believing in Santa Claus. But there's not really, at least how I've grown up and the people that I met, no, there's a lot of people that don't really grow out of religion, And but for me, sometimes in my head, it's a little bit of, I still feel like, I don't know, maybe I got betrayed by finding out Santa Claus wasn't real or something. I still remember being little and really believing that something was fucking putting shit under my chimney and Christmas tree. And it's just, it feels like God and religion and all of that is like the same thing. There isn't really the cold hard facts like you were talking about. It's just about the magic of believing and things like that. So I always think about Christmas as just like the first level of religion, and hopefully you stay on track. And religion in general was created by the government, not to sound all conspiracy theory,
Mm-hmm.
but I always feel like the higher ups or whoever that may be are making this up to keep people in line, because if there was no magic or if there was nothing to believe in, there would be chaos. People would be running red lights all fucking day, not caring about getting a ticket because um got you see what I'm saying. And and then I started saying, I think I said this a couple episodes ago about like, dude, just look at the dollar bill, behind it you've got fucking pyramid with an eye on it that says "In God We Trust." I don't think there's any other currency that has anything like that. I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, but
Not sure. Yeah.
it just, I spent my whole life with this dollar bill and stuff like that. And in God we trust. In the Pledge of Allegiance, we say individual under God or something like that. I don't know. And I
One
always,
nation under God, right?
yeah, and
Sure.
I always just found it a little weird that we kind of combine religion and government, and in a way, and the government wants us to act right too, right? They want us to, um might be going off trail a little bit here, but basically what I think of like the system or whatever. If everybody acts accordingly and does what they want, let's say nobody goes to jail, I don't know, and everybody has a job, everybody pays their taxes, nobody's doing anything illegal. At the end of it, we are giving more than we are getting from the
Right.
government in a
Yeah.
sense, which is why some people just go on unemployment, or they not unemployment, I don't know, disability or whatever. They game the system. Some people get financial aid when they really can't. Well, I just learned the other day that financial aid is actually a fucking loan. You got to pay it back. But
Right. Yeah. 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 Tell me about it. Yeah.
and they got interest rates in that, I don't know,
Oof.
you look into
Oof.
everything, they always want, they kind of like target the people who might be a little naive and not look too much into it. And at the end of the day, they're paying more money, giving more energy than they are getting out of it, which is also something that has stopped me from pursuing things that I'm actually really interested in. Like if I had the money, I would love to go to a university and take philosophy classes. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this. Like, yeah, ask me this 10 years later, I'd be like, nah, man, I just want to suck and fucking get money. But now I'm asking, I wouldn't say they're like the more important questions, but that's just the route my brain is taking. And that's why, I wanted to talk to somebody like you, because shit, it's free. And so I appreciate
There we
it.
go. Yeah. Why not?
But again, that's something that always just kind of like stops me from thinking. But it's just a degree. It's just a system. It just shows that, oh, you did the credentials at this. I don't know. Maybe I'd have a better time finding the words I want to look for if I went to college. But you know what I mean. I I'm
No,
interested in this
listen,
stuff.
I think you've said a ton right there, man. You said like so many things right there. I
Yeah,
mean,
I went
I
off
think you
on
could
fucking
write
Santa
a
Claus.
books.
Yeah.
You're right. You could start with Santa Claus, but and that's what I like about philosophy. Actually, is that so many of these things are intertwined, and so many of these ideas are intertwined. You're talking about student loans. You started talking about Santa Claus, and then you ended up talking about student loans. But there is actually that train of thought. And I think that, well, at least that's what I love about philosophy is that it helps me at least really start clarifying my thoughts. And yeah, you say, yeah, I think you're now being a little bit too hard on yourself. You said I was a little bit too hard on myself earlier. I'm going to pay you the same compliment because my hunch is that you can clarify your thoughts. You said, oh no, I don't know exactly what I'm saying. My words aren't all there, but I think your words are all there. It's just that for whatever reason, yeah, it takes time to really think about these things. It really takes time to think about these things.
Level 2 adult. Wait till I'm level
exactly.
3.
There you go. Exactly. And when you do actually take the time to really consider all of these different ideas that you're thinking and really lay them out in a very, let's say a better organized way, you will find the thoughts and you will find the words. It's just, hey, yeah, let's slow down. Now it is unfortunate, I think, because you said so much right there, man. We could talk, we could talk for hours and hours. I could teach a whole, you're talking about a whole degree, a whole bachelor's degree in philosophy, at least with everything that you've brought up right there. But one hunch is, or one thing that you kind of alluded to, one among many, by the way, yeah, because there's so, like I said, so much, is how the system that we live in doesn't really reward you and does train you to think a certain way and to ignore certain questions, right? And to think, well, wait a second, should I take these student loans? And shouldn't I take these student loans? And then going, wait a second, I didn't even understand what these student loans are. Now, I'm going to be paying these things off for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that's a really fascinating phenomenon. I believe because I got sucked into that sort of whirlwind as well. You know, that I took out a lot of the student loans, man. And up until very, very recently, I was paying them off. You know, so yeah, for a ton of time.
You beat the system. You beat the system.
Exactly, right? So that's one idea in mind. That said, there is this other tinge in a lot of your questions there that, you'll forgive me, I hope that I'm not putting words in your mouth, but there is, and it happens to all of us, like you said, the adultingness of our new experiences, that we do become a whole lot more cynical about so many things. And there's a good reason to become cynical and so pessimistic about things like, basically, or a lot of what you were saying is how much they're screwing us over, basically, how much the man is controlling us and doing these things to control us. And I think there's, without question, I think when you look at the history of philosophy, and not even just the history of philosophy, just the history of human thought, somebody has always been there to take this little bit and exploit it for their own personal gain. And exploit others by saying, hey, don't you believe in this little thing? Isn't this little thing nice? You said Santa Claus might be there to get us into religion. Some people have said Santa Claus is there to get us addicted to the religion of capitalism and consumerism and just buy.
That's a good one.
Exactly, right? And there is that, there are those people that exploit and do see, wait, there are these little nuggets that you and I believe. Let's try to control everybody with that little piece, right? However, and this is why, how I'm going to back off of my cynicism. I used to be far more cynical than you are, even, right? I used to almost want to commit revolution. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but that's as much as I'll say.
You'd only get in trouble if you actually did it.
Right. There you go then. So
pull up this podcast.
I was certainly considering these sorts of things a lot more drastically when I was younger. But now that I am a little bit older and I've talked to a few more people and read a few more books, you could see that, wait a second, isn't there something nice about religion? I'm not going to deny you for any minute that people have used religions and religious belief for towards nefarious goals. Yeah, human history is right. You can just, throw a dart at a history book and you'll land on a page where somebody used religion to kill so many other people, let's say, or enslave a whole group of people. But, and that, to me, that's a shame. Without question, that there are terrible people in human history. There's terrible people around us today. That doesn't, to me, that doesn't necessarily devalue the original belief, though, right? I think there is a lot of good in religious belief. I think it's unfortunate that many religious people that I've encountered have been very, let's say, bad. I'll just say that, right?
Hypocrites.
Exactly, among other things, right? And I think it's terrible that, like you said, that, by the way, I think that giving people student loans, that comes from a good place, right? That does come from a good place, but might that, unfortunately, was that maybe misplanned or misadministered, such that you're actually enslaving people now with these student loans? Because, of course, the problem with student loans, or the reason that people wanted to, the government, at least, if you look at it charitably, people wanted to implement student loans so that they could help people go to college. And isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing? But, it's been, I think since those student loans have been guaranteed by the government, terrible, terrible things have happened. And we've learned that these student loans have led to quite a bit of suffering. Now, is it more suffering or less suffering than it would have been otherwise? Listen, I don't know. I haven't studied it that much, but there are always going to be these unintended consequences that, for so many people are just screwed right now and looking at their student loans going, oh my God, what have I done? I wish I didn't go to college. College was not worth this. And
a lot of people went to college to avoid the situation they're in right now. And sometimes it just seems like college was a big cause of that issue.
And I think that colleges, by the way, are a big part of that problem. I think the way they sell college and they present themselves are a big part of that problem, especially now. You'll forgive me. I hope my bosses aren't listening again, but I'm not sure that everybody needs to take philosophy classes. I luck out. By the way, I recognize the good benefit that I, George, receive because people are forced to take philosophy classes. I get a job because people are forced to take philosophy classes. But if you ask me,
I totally,
after a couple of drinks, I'm not sure that people should be forced to take philosophy classes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Hasn't that helped people go into debt when all they wanted was a job? Or how did you say it? You said it perfectly, which was they wanted to not be in the situation that they're in right now.
Right.
They wanted to avoid that. Were they sold? Was there a bait and switch, so to speak?
Not to insult your profession, but it's like,
no, go ahead. I do it plenty myself.
It's not, I wouldn't say, especially in times like now when 2020 happened and everything, I wouldn't consider it an essential. I certainly don't think it is. Right. And, right now everybody's just focusing on getting what we need. One thing about me, I guess, and which is probably why I think the way I think, growing up, my parents would never let me take philosophy or major in philosophy, especially if they were going to be the ones paying for it. And I went my whole life thinking my parents are going to pay for college. For some reason, as a kid, I just didn't do the math. I thought they'd be able to do it, but I got surprised the moment I turned 18. I was having a conversation with my mom and she said something about like, well, how are you going to pay for college? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, aren't there student loans and shit like that? And so my parents wanted me to only go to college if it was like the highest percent of me making money. Nursing, a typical Filipino
Right.
stereotype. They wanted me to get into something that was essential. You're always going to need people in the medical field because everybody wants
Without
to
question.
live,
Right. Right.
And then just I don't have to explain it that much more. But so like with philosophy, if I were to get into that, first of all, I feel like I would get no support from my family, which is very discouraging. And at that time of my age, I just wasn't into it. Like I said, I was just into getting money and surviving. And now that I've done what I had to do in my life, I own a home. I don't really have much money problems and things like that. And I don't have that bachelor's degree in something that may sound sophisticated as philosophy or anything, but true. And getting older and really finding myself and having time alone, I've realized I'm really into those things. Like it's not about money. I want to actively search and just do better for myself, but at the same time I do want to help other people. It's just I guess I just need to find myself. And so I always kind of wonder how my life would have been if at 18, 19, I just said, fuck it. I love philosophy. I love psychology so much. I don't care if I go into debt. I'm going into that. I don't think personally I'd be able to handle the stresses of what that would have brought. So a part of me is glad that I didn't get into it. But then another part of me, I don't know, like if I were to go to college, if I were to take your classes and actually um, get that degree, I wonder if my mind would be different. Like I wish I could go in an alternate universe and talk to myself that has really spent more time of their life reading the books and taking the test. Like, oh, that's what I want to ask you. Like to pass your class or anything, are you more, do you grade on tests? Are you like all about tests, or are you kind of an attendance, see that this person is active in the class? Because I failed all the classes that needed. Oh my God, took a fucking sociology class. I showed up every fucking day, but I failed every class. But I took some things out of the class. I don't know. It's just a horrible test taker, but really, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I mean, yeah, that again, yeah, you're brilliant because you've just said so much, and there's so much to talk about what you've said, and I'm so happy because I didn't say it the first time, but you've repeated yourself now, and you said, yeah, it's so fascinating to me that people are interested in these questions. Like you said, you didn't want, and I think that there's a lot of people who don't even want to engage with these problems or these kinds of questions right now. I'll ask a question in class. Well, how do you know that this table is real? Right. And then they'll say, oh my God, this is stupid. What a stupid class I signed up for. It's like, well, okay, fair enough, but give me a chance, please. And let's keep going about the reality of the table. How do we know about the reality of the table or something like that? Because exactly what you said, these are the questions, for better or for worse, at least in my experience. Now, of course, I've got a biased experience because I am a philosopher. But I've got the experience with all the other my friends and stuff who are not philosophers, who are very, very, very interested in these questions. When you watch the news, when you watch politics, that's all they talk about is things like justice, which is what a lot of philosophers talk about. What is justice? What the nature of reality, and what we should do or not do. What is a person? I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too political right now, but now this week in the news, that's what is in the news a lot. Is this thing growing inside a woman's belly? Does that thing deserve rights? Why or why not? I don't want to get into that question right now, right? That's going to require a whole lot of other stuff. But that is a philosophical question. That is a philosophical question. And it fascinates me that when we get on later in life, those are the questions that really occupy us, because exactly like you said, wait, I've got a house. I'm okay now. But now what?
Now that all of the distractions of survival are
right.
out the window, and I'm stuck with myself, it just,
and by the way, maybe these questions do help with the basic survival questions too, because some people who do go get their jobs and they're sitting there and they did that job that their parents might have forced them into and said, wow, I'm doing this job. I am surviving, but is this kind of survival really worth it? Because I hate life right now.
Right.
And
right.
I'll bring it back to your the question that you did leave with, which was, wait, so how do I grade? and that is a long-winded answer. There is a long-winded answer to this question, which is, I started my career teaching little children in elementary school teacher, because my philosophy trajectory is quite windy and quite disjointed. I didn't go, it wasn't very straight. It certainly wasn't very straight, despite the fact that I got my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree in philosophy even before becoming a elementary school teacher. But through a confluence of events, I ended up as an elementary school teacher, which I loved. And excuse me, I love the idea of teaching little children, but there were so many other things that, unfortunately, for better or for worse, worked against me and my personality, what this thing called George is.
You weren't a pedophile or anything,
quite
right?
do it. No, I wasn't that.
Okay. Right.
No, but the job just didn't fit with me as well as I wish it could have. And I didn't, and the job, of course, suffered. But worse for me, because they found another teacher after I left. I stayed in that job for a long time. Number one, that job paid me very well. Being in elementary school, and now I know that there's other parts of the country where elementary school teachers are not paid well, but in New York City, elementary school teachers are paid very well, well enough, I believe. And I look back, you were talking about looking back, what if I had done this? If I would have stayed as an elementary school teacher, just pushed through it, push through the stress of work, man, I'd be a millionaire today. I'd be very, very well off. Maybe not a millionaire exactly, but I'd be so much better off. You said you're a homeowner. I'm jealous of you, man, because I'm not a homeowner, and I do think about that a lot. And today, as a college professor, I make far, far less money than I did as an elementary school teacher.
That's interesting.
Well,
from where I'm from, I hear elementary school. I know some elementary school teachers, and they seem to make not much. But I don't know
where
if
are
it's
you
different.
in California, though?
I'm in Northern California.
You're far northern?
Like Bay Area.
Oh, you are Bay Area. I would have thought that in the Bay Area that school teachers get a decent amount, and that California
how much is gas out there for a gallon?
Yeah. I don't drive. So New York does me very well, because I actually grew up in Los Angeles, and I only came out here for graduate school. I went to school in Southern California, undergraduate school in Southern California. So yeah, I remember driving, and I had an old beat up Volkswagen Beetle, from one of the old ones, because that's all I could afford. And man, moving to New York, everybody told me, oh, New York's so much more expensive. I'm like, do you know how expensive a car is? I don't have a car now. I take a subway everywhere. Now, there are limitations. Of course, I don't have the freedom because I don't have a car, but yeah, things are very, very, I save a lot of money not having a car. So I don't know how much gas is, but what is it in California? It's what, $5 a gallon right now or something like that?
It's up there. And I had this joke, everybody's complaining about how expensive it was. I was like, if gas is so expensive, stop buying it, broke ass motherfuckers.
Yeah, I guess. Right. But I remember when I was a kid, I didn't have the option to not buy gas. You had to. Right.
If we keep buying it, they're just going to keep raising the prices. You know, like there's a reason it's still expensive. I think
you don't live that far north. Yeah, you start riding your bicycle everywhere, I guess. Yeah, that's what they do up in Davis, right? Davis is up there. Yeah. Everybody in Davis rides their bicycles, right? So
skateboard.
It's something like that.
How long have you been in New York?
20 years. I moved here in 2001. Oh, wow.
So it's different. Are there still taxis everywhere, or has Uber completely killed them? Oh, okay.
No, there's still a lot of taxis. And just because of the political system here in New York, they changed the laws so that Uber's kind of integrated into the taxi environment that we had, because there was always the yellow cabs, which were very highly regulated and things like that. But there were also the private cab companies, which were very popular, especially outside of Manhattan. And now all of those people who are Uber drivers are basically still licensed, just as taxi drivers were many years ago. The only difference is that now they get their calls a little bit easier on the through Uber or Lyft or whatever like that. Yeah.
I wonder how it's like in California, like the laws, because I know a taxi driver, and he had something called a medallion, which is like it's like the 401k of fucking taxi drivers. And ever since Uber came out,
Anybody could be a taxi
he
driver, right?
lost, yeah, he lost all of the value in that medallion.
Right,
So now he can't retire. Now he's just driving Uber. It's just
right.
it's like the equivalent of, student loans.
Yeah, that's a shame. That's a shame that people do lose like that. But there are different things here in New York. I think it's quite similar that you do need to be you have to get something probably similar to that medallion to be an Uber driver, at least in New York City. Don't quote me on this. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the laws exactly. But every time I call up an Uber, it's always with the licensed plates. Taxi drivers in New York have special license plates that say T at the beginning and C at the end for taxi commission or something like that.
Nah, it's not
So,
like here in California.
yeah, right.
People
Where
just
everybody can
have a
Uber,
sticker.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that. But yeah, back to the question though about well, both questions. Number one, how do I grade? But also number two, how is this related to just getting older and thinking about philosophical questions? Is yeah, I couldn't manage that job. That job caused me too much stress. And the question, I don't think this is unique, by the way, to me. I think a lot of people ask this question: wait, is this worth it?
Right.
And what's a more philosophical question than that? Is this worth it? And is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? And am I living a good life this way? And listen, I don't know the answer to all those questions, but aren't those questions essential? And those are, for me at least, the core questions of philosophy, which is, how do you live a good life? How do you live a fulfilling life? How do you live a flourishing life? And that is why I got out of early childhood education and said, yeah, I mean, listen, from the beginning, I wanted to teach at the college level. So yeah, working with children, at least in school settings, was not well suited for me, the way things work and the way that the industry is. Now, that said, though, however, a lot of that philosophy of education has come, that I learned through teaching early childhood education, carried on with me. Namely, number one, and this is where I'm going to refer to your sociology class. Number one, when I taught early childhood education, if a child didn't learn, it was our fault. The teacher's fault. Now, that caused me, of course, a lot of stress, and that did make me quit the job because they put, I think, unfair amount of pressure on us to say, wait a second, this is your fault if the child isn't learning how to read. Well, no, it's not exactly my fault. I mean, what about the parents? What about this? What about the rest of society?
What are they feeding this kid?
Exactly,
You know?
and things like that. What's the nutrition and what's the home life like? However, there is still that inkling with me as a college professor that says, wait, if somebody's failing my class and is attending every single class and doing all the work and still failing, that might be my fault. And that is an attitude that carried with me from early childhood education. And I talked to a lot of my colleagues at the university, and without even flinching, they'll say, "Oh yeah, all my students failed the test." I said, "Okay, listen. If one student fails a test, that's probably the student's fault. If 2 students, 3 students, if all the students fail, that's probably your fault, man. How is it that everybody failed the test?"
Right. I'd always use that excuse.
Fail,
if I failed a test to make to soften the blow from my mom, I'd be like, everyone failed it. You know?
right.
It seemed like it wasn't my fault.
Right, exactly. So I do take a lot of pride in teaching students in my class. So you say, oh, well, how do you get the grade and stuff? For me, it's hard if you're alive and you're attending the classes and you're doing the work. I've designed my classes in such a way that you can't fail the class if you do all the work. And if you do all the work and you still fail, then I feel like there's something wrong with me, right? Now, there are certain classes, by the way, I don't want a doctor who had a teacher like me, right? So they say, oh, you're going to be a heart surgeon. Now, you've done all the work, but you still don't know how to be a heart surgeon,
yeah.
right? I'll pass you. You could go ahead and be a heart surgeon. I don't mean it like that, right? Because this is philosophy. This isn't heart surgery. Thank God, right? But there is that kind of thing that, wait a second, I should figure out how to design a class so that if a student does do this work, they are learning the philosophy. And that's my job. And that's a part of my job that I take a lot of pride in, that I regret a lot of other people, a lot of my other colleagues, let's say, might not necessarily take always. Now, I don't want to speak against all my colleagues. There are a lot of my colleagues who love teaching and who love being good teachers and being better teachers. But I've also got a lot of colleagues who hate teaching, and
It's
that
just a
bothers
job
me.
for them, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they got into university education for other reasons, like research. They would prefer to do research and that kind of stuff. Which God bless them, if they want to do research, do that. But then we should take these people out of the classroom, because. But it is a weird trade-off. The whole university system, the whole college system, is this very odd place where teaching, for better or for worse, and is just not highly rewarded. Being a good teacher is not what is highly rewarded at my job, for example, and that's fine with me. I don't mind, because that gives me time to do my other stuff. I do love teaching, and I've structured my courses in such a way that I can be a good teacher, and they recognize that I'm not going to be that fabulous researcher, by the way. I'm just not, because that's not what I'm interested in. I'm much more interested in researching other things like filmmaking, like music making, like this sort of stuff. Well, let me ask you a question though. Let me turn the tables on you a little bit, because I see that electric guitar in the back. I see that axe back there.
Oh, you see that?
Yeah. And I would imagine, now I don't know your parents, I don't know you, but the way you talk, you were like, oh yeah, my parents would not support that kind of thing. But isn't that a sort of value that you did pick up probably later in life? I don't know. I'm just guessing, right?
I've been playing the guitar for over a year now. And
wow.
I've always been interested in playing the guitar. I remember I wanted to play when I was in middle school, but my reading level was so low, I wasn't allowed to take electives. I had to take 2 English classes, so I couldn't have band or any of that stuff.
Wow.
Always was been into like the rock and heavy metal stuff. And now that I'm an adult with my own house, I finally have found the time to. My parents never believed in me, man. I remember when I first told my mom I was going to play the guitar, like when I get the house, she just kind of like laughed and was like, yeah, we'll see about that. And we'll kind of like, she would just ask the more important questions about, whatever's going on with my money and things like that. And so, but you know what? I try not to look at it in a negative way. I know it comes out very negative, but I use it almost as my parents not believing in me as like a motivation to do what I want. Like, I don't know. It's like I talked about it with my mom, or not my mom, but with like certain close friends. My mom has never been proud of me for things that I want to do. My mom was only proud of me for what seems like doing what society, like what looks successful in society, as you may. But yeah, other things I've been interested in, like skateboarding and fighting and things like that. I could understand why a mother wouldn't like me fighting, but yeah, I just like I just remember like watching skateboard videos and stuff, and I was into it. And my dad, everybody would just kind of laugh and be like, "Yeah, you can't do that." But yeah, I don't know. But what was your question? I'm sorry. You had a question about the guitar.
But are your parents from the old country then?
Yeah, my parents are from the Philippines. They grew up. They took like Catholic school and things like that. So that's another thing with religion that you were talking about earlier. They didn't really have the answers. They just kind of said, just believe in it. I was forced to go to church so many times, didn't like. And it's just kind of ironic how when I finally think I see a ghost and I tell my dad, my parents know how unreligious I am. I'm repeating, like, I know this sounds crazy, but I think I saw a ghost. One of the first questions my mom's asked is like, are you on drugs? I was like, no, completely sober that night, this and that. And my dad is just like, you got a peeping Tom. But it's just a couple of months ago, I don't live with my parents anymore, but I still visit them and stuff. And we had a conversation about them praying. And I guess my parents pray sometimes, like every night or something like that. And where am I going with this? So basically, I don't know, maybe I scoffed at it or something, or I gave my dad a funny look. And my dad just my dad's in his 60s, mid 60s. I think he's 66. He was just like, son, you have to believe me. You just got to give it a try, And I just kind of like started thinking like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's just like my dad's getting older, so the closer to death he gets, the more at peace he wants to get with his religious side.
Right. No, I think I asked that question though because my parents are also from the old country, Greece, and there is that sort of a different perspective. Let's say that a different perspective that is that's a little bit more concerned with the more practical issues at hand, and not really. And unfortunately, again, I don't want to speak for your parents, but for my own father, who's an immigrant from the old country, there isn't as much imagination about how to make it in these odd ways that they can't envision, right? Yeah. Like you said, it's got to be nursing, or it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And my dad still to this day doesn't understand how I make a living. Right. He's like, what exactly
did your dad do for a living?
He worked in the diners all his life. He flipped burgers all his life. And he just said, hey, listen, you got to go do something, that makes money and stuff like that. Now, my dad's got a weird relationship with money anyways, but for whatever reason, and I think there is that aspect that, and maybe I'm a little bit more rebellious, but perhaps I'm too American. I don't know. My parents have never said that necessarily about me, but yeah, there's that aspect, especially since I teach Japanese. I say that a lot, Japanese culture. There is that aspect that I'm just a bit more rebellious. And so I remember when I started college, I wanted to major in something very practical, computer engineering or computer science, even to be a computer programmer.
Oh, I got a funny story.
For whatever reason. Go ahead.
I just want to cut you off real quick because you said computer science. So like when I started going to college, like my first semester, I was really into mass communication. As you can tell, I'm doing this fucking podcast, but I really one of my dreams was when the radio was cool. I wanted to have like a radio show or do essentially what I'm doing. I wanted to go to college to get the skills I needed to do this. Dude, my mom went on the computer and changed my schedule. She unenrolled me in mass communications and enrolled me in computer science. And so I show up to school 17. I started going to college when I was 17. And I'm just like, what the hell, mom? And she was like, I just, mass communication doesn't seem practical. I thought, if you learn how to use computers, you'd get a better job that way. It seems more in demand. And I'm like, and by the way, computer science was the hardest fucking class I ever took. Geez, I learned something though. I did learn something, but coding and all that, no, thank you. But go ahead. I'm sorry. So you're talking about...
I think that's a brilliant story. I mean, that's so funny though, because like I said, it's just my whole point is just that at some point I learned to say screw off to everybody and I'm going to do whatever I want. And I majored in philosophy, not even really knowing what philosophy was, but to say screw off to everybody, because it seemed like that kind of thing. And of course, when I studied it more, I was like, no, this is perfect for me. Right. And I've stayed with it and I've loved it. And I've had a weird relationship where, like I said, I had that winding road. For the next podcast, we could talk about that weird stuff.
Sure.
But I really like that notion though, or I want to be a little bit more charitable to our parents because I mean, listen, they have
I don't want to
talk
bad on my parents.
Yeah, like exactly.
They did a lot for me. I
could talk a lot. I could talk very bad about my parents, by the way, too. But it's just like this idea that, wait a second, they've got this different perspective. And for whatever odd reason, I just saw the world slightly differently. And here's what I love about your story, though, right? Is that because it's very similar to my story, which is it was a long, winding road, but now I'm doing whatever I wanted to do.
It's like I liked what I liked so much, nothing was going to stop me from no matter what it was.
Right. And that is one thing that I love. I forgive me for sounding a little bit jingoistic for a second, but isn't that kind of why our parents came to America? Because they wanted this sort of freedom for their children to get the big life. And now they had a very narrow notion of what that great life was. And my dad had that narrow notion for me and my brother too. However, here I am and going, wait a second, Dad, you did right by coming here. Now you didn't think this was the great life, but man, I play guitar too. That's why I'm attracted to the guitar. I saw the guitar in the back. I was like, hey man, that's awesome. And I got the guitar because my parents were against me learning guitar too, by the way, but slightly different story. But yeah, it's just that, wait a second, look where we are now. And isn't that the philosophical sort of insight to say, wait a second, there is that bigger picture that says, now you'll forgive me for sounding a tad religious, and I don't mean to sound
Oh
religious.
no, you're not
But
going to offend me
sometimes some
with
people
religion.
do say, wait, wasn't it meant to be that way? I don't know that that's necessarily true or not. But
Working
I
out.
might say things work out. It's like you said, that level 2 adult. There's that level 1 adult where things seem very there's good reason to be cynical, like going, God, this is what being an adult is like. Screw this. I hate being an adult, right?
Sometimes it could just be shock.
Right. There's the shock, but then we learn to play the game a little bit better.
Mhm.
And it's so fascinating that we can still pursue our goals. And so when you say, oh, listen, I'm very curious about these philosophy things, man, yeah, go do it, man. But by the way, you don't have to go to college. In the same way, you're not going to conservatory to learn about guitar. Just go to the library, pick up the
and that's the thing.
book,
I love the time we live in now because everything's so accessible.
Right.
I can't see myself doing this, even if I were to be the age I am right now in maybe like 2005 or 6. I just feel like I wouldn't be able to talk to you. The tabs to look up tabs on the guitar would not be as available. I'd have to play by ear, and I'm just barely getting to that level.
So and they still do. They sell the tab books at Guitar Center. I spent
heard they're
so
horrible,
much
though.
money on those, man.
And I heard they're horrible.
Yeah, well, they're not as horrible as some of those, but yeah, they are bad if you really want to get good. But yeah, I got a lot of those because those were expensive, man.
YouTube videos,
really
man.
Expensive. Yeah.
There's brilliant tutorials online. You just whatever song you want to look up, maybe somebody will have it. If they don't, it'll be up in the next couple of months. Somebody else will find a new song. It's just always something to work on. Okay, so how long have we been talking? About an hour and a half? I hate to kill up too much of your, I don't know how much time you had available, but if we do end this soon, I just kind of want to ask you, how the hell do I know you? Like our mutuals are Wigwolf. Do you work with Mr. Wigwolf?
No. Do you know who that is? I don't even know who that is.
Oh, he made a movie and I was
yes. I don't know a lot of these people personally on social media, but I know that I'm in a lot of circles of filmmakers.
Did you find me or did I find you? I don't know.
I'm not sure exactly the direction. I suspect that one way or the other. But I mean, like you said about the days we live in, right?
Yeah.
How do we find each other? And this is what I love is that, through social media, listen, I'm not saying that social media is filled with angels, but I know that I've benefited a great deal from social media just because, the last movies I've made, my whole filmmaking trajectory so far has been because of social media. And I could draw that up and draw that map where, I just finished producing during the production, filming a feature film. And now I'm hoping that over the next year or so, I'll finally edit it. I hope that to be done with the editing maybe next month.
Can you talk about the movie, like what it's about?
I could talk about it. Yeah, sure. I don't mind talking about it.
What kind of movies do you make?
Right. This particular movie's more campy kind of horror movie, just because, cool. Like you said, you like heavy metal. Well, yeah, I like heavy metal too. And I want to get kind of like that heavy metal sort of 80s horror movie that
nice.
Kind of silly, lots of vulgarity and gross stuff. That
like a slasher film kind of thing.
It's something along those lines. Not exactly a slasher film, but something like that. And we'll see how it ends up. And but by the way, like you said, a lot of that came because of social media. It came because of social media and things and people meet. Almost all of my actors. I think almost all of my actors are the result of social media connections.
Wow.
One of them I knew.
Do you act yourself or do you just produce?
I tried to act and I did play a small role in this particular movie. I wish I didn't. I'd like to kind of demarcate. Listen, filmmaking is hard enough. Filmmaking and acting, that's piling it on,
Yeah, so, I totally understand. Like I've fandangled in a bunch of things. I've edited, I've made music videos, I've made music, I've been in the videos, and it's just like the thing that seems to be stopping me is I hate editing. It's work to me. It's just so monotonous. There's not much creativity in it. And if there is, there's a lot of have you heard of the show on Hulu called Dave with Lil Dicky?
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a great show.
He's like a white rapper, right?
Yeah, if you have Hulu, I recommend it because it really shows you that being like a rapper or in the art world, being Hollywood in general is not what it seems it is. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And kind of like to talk about my mom real quick. Like I always wanted to be in movies and stuff like that. And my mom would shut it down by saying, the only reason why you want to be on TV is because that's all you know. It's like, I remember wanting to be on TV as when I was young too, what my mom would say, but it's like, you grow up and then you find other interests. Well, it's like, fuck, I'm grown up and my other interests are still the same interests that I had. So I'm just pursuing it. What else was I gonna say? You said you're into heavy metal. I have a song that I want to play. I'll close it out. But when I won't play it right now, but I'll just edit it into the episode. And when this ends, it's called, are you familiar with the band Death?
Yeah. Old time. Yeah, you're into that old stuff. Great, man.
I've just kind of like learned about it because
hardcore stuff.
Yeah, man. They got this song called The Philosopher. So I feel like it fits you really well. Or at least fits this episode really well. But yeah, like with the guitar, I guess I specifically wanted to play heavy metal. Like that's just what I was into. And now that I'm learning, I'm like, this genre is not that hard. But I would want death metal to always just kind of be the base of my my musical journey. And then hopefully we'll branch out. And I would just love to look back and be like, oh, I was starting with Death and now we're playing some acoustic shit. Who knows?
Right.
Mr. George, thank you for coming on my show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, listen, I had a blast. This was great.
I did too, man. I learned a lot. I feel like we clicked really well, and you are definitely invited to more episodes, man. I feel like there's many hours of free college education I can get from you. So I really appreciate it, man. And I'm assuming you're a busy guy or whatever, but we'll keep in touch, man. Great talking to you, man. You seem very intelligent. There's so much more I want to talk about, but we'll get to it, man. I'm sure today.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
All right, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Catch you later.
Catch you later.